Okay, good morning, everyone. Amazing to be here. You know, we love to do these data citizens on the roads. We love to connect with our customers, our partners. It's one of the most important things that we do, and it's been a while since we've done one here in California. So very happy that you're all here. Thank you for coming. Like Chirag said, we're going to have a fantastic day, and this is actually a really important moment. As we're all here as data leaders, data professionals, in some way, I believe this is our moment. Like the work that we've been doing for so long has never been more important. Building a strong data foundation is the most critical thing to make AI work. And obviously, we'll talk about that. What Collibra, the small part, we believe we can help make that a reality. Now, it's also a bit of a moment for us personally at Collibra. And so I don't know how many of you know this, but we started Collibra 18 years ago as a spin-off from the University of Brussels, where we're doing research on semantic technologies, semantic web, ontologies. That's kind of the academic research that we're incredibly passionate about. And at the time, we had this big belief that if you're able to capture data in a way that not just people, but machines, systems could also understand the meaning, it created so many opportunities. Now, you could argue we were 18 years too early, but kind of coming full circle, now with AI, we're here. Agents are consuming data, and the need for that semantic context, those ontologies, that context is more important than ever. So really excited to talk about what we're doing, our product strategy, and like Chirag said, we're going to go much deeper as well because so much is changing. And about a month ago, we did a survey, a Harris poll, where we asked senior leaders about their challenges with AI, right? And of course, some of the results were as expected, but one theme that we heard loud and clear was what we call the hallucination tax. And this is really important because over the last 3-4 years, it's incredible to see how quickly AI has evolved from 3 years ago, ChatGPT, generative AI, just generating tokens, generating content, to now where we're having agents that are supposed to be autonomous, taking actions, making decisions. But the reality is we are not fully there yet, right? There's still this need for having a human in the loop, a person that still needs to validate, double check. In a lot of cases, we can't truly trust the outcomes of agents yet. And that's what we call a hallucination tax. And I think that's really important that we're solving for that tax. And if I think about success with AI and agentic AI, we really think about two key metrics. One metric is task completion. How often is the agent able to successfully complete a task without manual intervention, right? Is that 50%, 60, 80, 90, right? And the second metric, which is becoming increasingly important, is token consumption, right? How many tokens does the agent need to consume to get to that task completion, to be able to do it? Is it 1 million tokens and that agent has to think for 10 minutes, or is it 10,000 tokens and we can have the answer in 10 seconds? And these things start to really matter. That's a big shift that I've seen with customers over the last 6-9 months, where before ROI wasn't a real discussion. It was all about, let's go all in, let's learn, let's experiment, let's prototype, more use cases is better. Today, we're all realizing that AI isn't free. And so now both metrics, task completion and token consumption, become incredibly important. And the gap that we've identified is twofold. One is what we call a context gap. Because if you think about enterprise AI, to me, and I might be a little biased, but I think 10-15% is selecting the model, 85% is getting your organization's data to connect to that model, right? We're all using probably similar models, whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic or Google or open source, and every week, every month, we're seeing kind of new innovations, better models, and those models today aren't the constraint anymore. Those models have become really, really good, especially over the last 6 months. The constraint is how do we get our enterprise data, structured and unstructured. We don't have the luxury anymore to just look at structured data, structured and unstructured, to connect to those models. And it's not as easy as we maybe initially thought it was. And I think there's a lot of, for example, a use case around analytics, AI analytics, chat to your data. I'm sure many of you are experimenting or having this running in production. And the research and benchmarks are very clear. Without providing the agents really good context, you can't get task completion above a certain threshold. If you want to get to 90%, you need to provide that context. So that context becomes incredibly important to make sure the agent does the right thing. I kind of thinking about analogies, simple analogy I like to use is, if you think about an agent as like putting a Formula One engine in a driverless car, very powerful, very autonomous. The car drives on the road, and the road obviously is data, otherwise there's nothing to do. The car still needs a map to make sure that the agent actually knows where to go. And the theme, again, going back to the second metric around token consumption, agents and models are getting really strong. So at some point, they can actually keep iterating through this agent loop to figure out how to query the right data, how to get to the right task. But it's going to consume a lot of tokens. I talked to a head of data and AI of a large financial service industry, a customer recently said, look, Anthropic is telling me that we don't need context at all, the models are good enough, right? And it might be true, but the amount of tokens and iteration that the model is going to take to actually get to the answer, it's going to cost you a lot. So again, both metrics become incredibly important. Now, the second problem that I think we're facing is what I call governance fragmentation and this control gap, right? And we've seen a lot of innovation, especially on the data side, over the last couple of years to deal with fragmentation. The decoupling from storage and compute with those modern data platforms solves a lot of the typical data silos that we've had. Right now, you're able to process data wherever you're storing that data. That data lakehouse architecture is definitely the great architecture there. But we're starting to get a lot more fragmentation on the new stack which we're building, right? On the right, we're building a new AI stack. Obviously, the models are evolving very, very quickly. We're building new harnesses. There's new agent platforms. There's new operations platforms. There's a lot of new stacks being built there, and we're seeing a lot of fragmentation all over the place. The other big factor is on the data source perspective. Again, agents don't just use structured data anymore. Your unstructured data, we know, is 80% of your organization is unstructured data, which is, I'm sure, locked away in OneDrive and SharePoint. Not all of it is already on your data platform. So the fragmentation, it becomes a real problem. And this is also what we're hearing from our customers is everyone wants to kind of dive in with AI. Everybody understands how strategic it is to not kind of wait by the sidelines. But there's two other factors that become problematic. The risk component doesn't go away, right? The stakes are higher than ever. Nobody wants to have an agent work with kind of customer data, and there's a big kind of news flash where the agent is doing the wrong thing. So how do you manage that risk appropriately without kind of balancing the moving forward quickly with making sure you take risks appropriately? And then the third, which, like I said, a year ago, 2 years ago, wasn't really an issue, but then ROI is becoming a real concern. How do we make sure we actually focus and invest in the use cases that matter? And how are we intentional about understanding of all the opportunities that we have with AI, which are the ones that we really want to invest in? And how do we manage that funnel? How do we manage that life cycle from experimentation to production? Because we've also realized that taking a use case from experimentation into production, the experimentation prototyping is often the easiest and the fastest. Getting that in a state where risk, legal, finance, technology, IT is confident and comfortable to put that in production is often the bigger bottleneck. And so what happens over the last couple of years is that we've been kind of diving in, we've done a lot of experimentation, and we've built a lot of shadow AI, right? Nobody truly knows what agents are running, what models are running, what data is used by what model or what agent in what use case. And so creating that visibility so that we can move along with confidence becomes really important. So how do we as Collibra think about kind of contributing to that solution? I think if you think about those problems, those are all fundamentally governance problems, right? This is about visibility, it's about lifecycle, it's about control, it's about collaboration, right? These are the things that we've done for a long time. And so how do we think about our kind of broader kind of platform strategy is, if you think about control, there's two big components with the two gaps that we want to fill. One is the context gap, which is all about context governance. The other is the control gap, which is all about AI Command Center and AI governance. And so I started with the context governance. This is really building on top of our data governance platform already, with the differentiation that it's both structured and unstructured data. And you'll see us talk about the things we're doing from an unstructured data perspective. But if you think about context for context governance, I hear a lot of our customers building a semantic layer. That business context, that ontology, that semantic model, again, becomes absolutely critical to ground agents in your enterprise reality. The big discussion is, where do you build that layer? Is it in your BI tools? Is it in your data platform tools? Is it in your ETL tools? Again, we are a strong believer that some of that context is going to have to live everywhere. It's going to live in Snowflake, it's going to live in Databricks, it's going to live in Google, it's going to live in your unstructured data, you're going to customize certain things in your own harness, so it's going to live in different places, but you're going to have to govern that. I talked to a lot of large financial institutions, for example, that have real concern where they have lots of different deployments of different data platforms, and every data platform is redefining what a trade means and all the different types of trades. And so the standardization becomes incredibly important. We believe strongly that the way best to do that is building on top of this data product approach. Because this is not just about your physical metadata, it's about how do you build highly curated, well-defined, with good quality data products that are then consumed by not just people, but by agents. The AI Command Center, which we'll talk about, is again on the control side. Is if you think about context as the input for your models, the AI Command Center is governing the model and the output of those models, right? Which is all about visibility. What models, what agents, what use case do we have? It's about traceability. What data are those models actually using? And then how do we govern what those models can actually do, right? Now, the new thing, which I think is new for Collibra, is the runtime context. And we'll show more about that. But this is realization that for the last 10 years, we've had the luxury of focusing on structured data, whereas today we have to focus on unstructured data as well. And there's a lot of AI readiness that we have to build around that unstructured data. Unstructured data is still locked away, and so we have the same problems. If I'm responsible building a support agent, I need to make sure that I'm able to discover all the right unstructured documents, call transcripts, policy documents, contracts, link that with my structured data, make sure the quality is correct across all structured and unstructured. And this is what we call runtime context, where we're able to deliver that for the agents themselves. Now, if we think about governance and taking a step back, if that's all based on a governance foundation, we have to change the way we do governance as well. Because historically, we've really done governance for two reasons, right? If you simplify it, one reason is for regulatory reasons, whether it's reporting, data privacy, and of course, that continues to be incredibly important. That doesn't go away. The other reason we've typically done data governance or data cataloging is to help our analytics teams work better, help them find the right data that they can trust to build better reports, dashboards. Now that quickly is changing from what I call design time to runtime, right? Before we did governance, the work we did by building data products, building data sets, doing data quality, doing lineage, having clear definitions, was ultimately to have other data consumers, whether you're a data engineer, a business analyst, a BI analyst, to use the right data to build a better data pipeline, to build a better report. But that's now very, very quickly changing from design time to runtime, where it's no longer people that consume that governed data, but it's actually agents that consume it. And so again, the stakes are a lot higher. And it also changes from something that's nice to have, because if it's design time, we can still rely on the judgment of people to do the right thing. When it's runtime with agents, we cannot rely on the judgment of agents, right? If the agent does know, they're great at hallucinating. And we'll go back to that kind of hallucination gap that we're seeing. And so we fundamentally believe that governance needs to change from a thing that's kind of more manual as documentation to something that's an engine. That's a true engine that almost becomes a runtime engine that delivers both context and control. But what does it mean to kind of evolve governance as an engine? One is around the user interface, right? How the engine gets consumed changes. Before, the user interface was incredibly important because, again, it was people that consume that content to do a certain task. Now, the user interface becomes your API, your MCP, your CLI, because this is how agents are going to consume the data. And so there's an important shift from the user interface, the UX experience becoming the most important, to actually the power of the data model, the power of the operating model, the power of that ontology. The richer and more powerful that data model, that context model that you have, the more the agents are going to be able to leverage that to drive, again, task completion and token consumption. And so this is why we are a strong believer, going full circle where kind of Collibra started 18 months ago, building that strong ontology, what they call ontology, or knowledge graph, or semantic graph, or metadata graph. Lots of terminologies out there, but that becomes the absolute foundation of your governance engine. And then we believe in what we call doing that at scale, because the other thing that we've seen over the last couple of years is that it's often too manual, right? The data stewards, we've all been here. It's hard to motivate them to do the work. It's often tedious, a lot of manual work. It doesn't scale. You can't hire 1,000 data stewards. You've got to find ways to do things more automatically. So the way we believe in that is what we call shifting left control and shifting right context. And so if you think about governance as an engine, the more you can make governance part of the engineering work, the building work from the very beginning, the more you're going to make governance scalable. And I think that's a fundamental belief. We cannot do governance after the fact. It doesn't work, it doesn't scale. And then the more we can shift right the context of the result of the governance work, making that available to where people are actually doing the work, is the best experience, the best user experience, whether you're a human or an agent, that you can deliver. So like I said, we're a big believer in data products as an approach to make sure you're governing the right thing that drives value. If you then think about shifting left, that's data contracts to make sure those data products can actually be validated at runtime. And of course, shifting right would be either through a data marketplace for people or to MCP, CLI, semantic layer for, again, agentic use cases. The other thing that we hear a lot around increasing importance is access. That last mile of I want to get access to a data set. Today, often what I hear, that takes weeks or months, right? Somebody has to approve it, to review it, they don't have any context. That last mile has such a big impact on the experience. And if you think about a data marketplace experience, really facilitating that last mile becomes incredibly important. But again, if I'm an agent, I'm not going to wait a month to wait for access. I'm going to find a way around it. And so access management, access governance across all these different data platforms becomes very important. The other one is around policy monitoring. If you think about control, again, the old way of doing governance was quite manual. You had assessments, and then often you had monthly, quarterly attestations where basically we asked people, is your use case doing the right thing? Are you using PII data? You say yes or no, and you sign your name. But how do you really know? That doesn't scale anymore in an environment like this. So we need to find ways to do this much more scalable and in an automated way. And this is where we kind of looked at what security platforms like Wiz and so on have done, where we're building a control graph, again, that ontology, where we're able to connect all the different dots and apply controls as graph queries on top of that graph. For example, if I have an AI use case that's been classified by our risk team as a high-risk use case, and again, through the lineage and traceability, I know that I'm using a table from Snowflake as inference for that use case in that model. If suddenly I classify that table as PII or having PII, that's a control failure. How do you do that if you're not able to connect those dots in an automated way? And again, this is a unique strength of having that kind of ontology, that semantic graph, by being able to connect those dots. Data quality continues to be incredibly important. Again, there's no longer the human judgment that says, this doesn't look right. We're going to have to adjust. For agents, shifting left, data observability on the pipelines, and then the quality rules and scores as, again, incredibly important context if an agent decides which table to use to answer a certain question. The last two, actually, the ones that I get most excited about, is around unstructured data. Again, we believe if you have unstructured data, and Reese is going to join me on stage in just a little bit to show that, a big part of impacting token consumption is being able to filter the right unstructured data, the right documents for your use case. So many of us have hundreds of thousands of documents, call transcript, contracts in our SharePoints, OneDrives, where have you. If we give all of that to an agent, and agents might be smart enough to figure out what to use, but they're going to consume so many tokens. If we're able to filter that down, curate it, make it high-quality data products, data slices, knowledge products, that's a great way, again, to impact task completion and token consumption. And then finally, on the AI governance side, one aspect, and actually I'll forward here to our kind of AI governance, and this month we announced our AI Command Center, which is really the new version of our AI governance product. So it's all about controlling the models and the outputs. The three things that I see customers struggle with, one is visibility, two is defining the policies, or AI policies, and then three is how do we actually validate and enforce those policies at runtime. And this is really what we want to solve with AI or AI Command Center. One is the visibility. And again, building on top of our governance foundation, if you think about creating the visibility we created on the catalog side by being able to connect to all your data platforms, capture all your data assets, doing the lineage, the traceability, the quality. Now we're doing the same thing for your AI assets. We're integrating deeply with your AI platforms, Google, Microsoft, Databricks, Snowflake, AWS, Anthropic, OpenAI, what have you, automatically extracting, inventorizing, discovering all of your AI assets, and then also doing the lineage and the traceability. So we automatically know which AI model with agent is using what data? And so from an auditability, impact analysis, root cause analysis perspective, that becomes incredibly important. The second big topic that we see our customers needing is how do you actually define your policy framework and then implement a life cycle, a workflow to bring an AI use case from experimentation, prototyping into production. And again, it requires a lot of collaboration. Our risk team or legal team needs to do assessments to define what the agent or what the use case is allowed to do. Now, that's incredibly important context to then automatically enforce as the guardian agent, as an enforcement layer, when an agent actually wants to take an action. How do we know if that action is allowed or not? One, we need that context. We need that policy framework to be able to validate action. And then we need the runtime capability for which we are deploying guardian agents to end runtime, be able to make that decision, allow, block, or escalate. And this is really our vision around AI Command Center, building on top of our data governance foundation. Now, our job as Collibra is, of course, and we treat it very seriously, to be able to offer the best possible platform, but we want to do more than that. Ultimately, it's not about a feature function. Ultimately, we got to drive business outcomes and business impact. And this is where we internally talk about 4 hero journeys. And again, our customers are always front and center. Our customers are our heroes, and we want to help you deliver on those outcomes and on that business impact. I want to prescriptively help you to get there in the easiest way possible. So from a product perspective, we don't want to deliver features, functions. We want to deliver full end-to-end user journeys that help you get there without having to customize, configure, put the dots together yourself. From an implementation perspective, we've seen a lot of best practices. We've seen what works, what doesn't work. And so again, we want to help you make the right decisions to ultimately get to that outcome as quickly as possible. And so we've defined the 4 hero journeys that we see the most with our customers. One is around transforming unstructured data for AI, which is top of mind for almost all the organizations we talk to. 2 is about delivering ROI with data products. Again, data products we believe is a really important way to deliver context to agents. 3 is about turning AI ambition into AI value with our AI governance and AI command center. And 4 is about complying with regulations. We don't want to forget that one. It's not maybe as sexy as AI, but continues to be incredibly important for many, many of our customers.